The summer sun blazed mercilessly over Oak Ridge Estates, casting sharp shadows across the meticulously manicured community pool area. Sarah Thompson sat rigidly in her wheelchair, her 13-year-old daughter, Emma, nestled close beside her, both trying to escape the oppressive heat. The pool sparkled just feet away, a tantalizing oasis that Emma could only watch, her cerebral palsy preventing her from joining the other children splashing and laughing. Rebecca Hartley, known throughout the neighborhood as the HOA Karen, had been watching them. Her eyes narrowed with a mixture of contempt and something darker, a calculated malevolence that had been brewing for months. To her, the Thompsons were an inconvenience, a blemish on the pristine image of Oak Ridge Estates that she so carefully curated. Sarah sensed the tension before anything happened. Years of protecting her daughter had given her an almost supernatural awareness of potential threats. She gripped the handles of Emma's wheelchair, her knuckles turning white, muscles caught like a protective spring. "That chair is taking up too much space," Rebecca's shrill voice cut through the humid air. "This is a community pool, not a parking lot for equipment." Emma flinched, her body already sensitive to the judgment in Rebecca's tone. Sarah's hand instinctively moved to her daughter's shoulder, a silent gesture of comfort and protection. "Emma has every right to be here," Sarah responded evenly, her years of experience as a county sheriff giving her voice an unmistakable authority. Yet today she was simply a mother, not a law enforcement officer. Today she was Sarah Thompson, Emma's defender. Rebecca's face contorted. The rejection of her implied command was something she rarely experienced. In Oak Ridge Estates, people typically scrambled to accommodate her demands. But Sarah Thompson was different. There was a steel in her gaze that suggested she wouldn't be intimidated. What happened next was so quick, so unexpected, that for a moment, time seemed to stand still. Rebecca lunged forward, her manicured hands gripping the handles of Emma's wheelchair. Before Sarah could react, before anyone could comprehend what was happening, she began to push the chair directly toward the deep end of the pool. Emma's terrified scream pierced the air. Her limited motor control meant she couldn't brace herself, couldn't fight back. The wheelchair tilted, gravity and Rebecca's aggressive momentum working in cruel harmony. Time seemed to slow. Sarah's training kicked in. Years of split-second decision-making as a sheriff crystallized into pure, focused action. But in that suspended moment, something else flashed in her eyes. A mother's pure, visceral rage. The splash was loud. The pool water erupted around Emma's wheelchair, droplets catching the sunlight like 1,000 tiny, glittering daggers. Nearby swimmers jumped back, shocked into momentary paralysis. Rebecca stepped back, a look of stunned satisfaction crossing her face, a satisfaction that would be devastatingly short-lived. She didn't know who Sarah Thompson really was. She didn't know what was coming. And she was about to learn a lesson she would never forget. The next few moments were a blur of chaos and action. Sarah moved with lightning speed, diving into the pool fully clothed. Her years of tactical training transformed her into a precision instrument of rescue. Emma's wheelchair had begun to sink, the metal frame pulling downward with alarming speed. Emma's body was limp, her cerebral palsy making her movements difficult even in the best circumstances. But Sarah's strong arms wrapped around her daughter, pulling her to the surface with a determination that brooked no resistance. The other pool-goers stood frozen, a collective gasp hanging in the air like a suspended breath. As Sarah emerged from the water, Emma coughing and sputtering, she locked eyes with Rebecca. The HOA president took an involuntary step backward, her moment of triumph evaporating instantaneously. "Someone call an ambulance," Sarah commanded, her voice cutting through the shocked silence. It wasn't a request. It was an order that demanded immediate compliance. A young lifeguard, finally snapping out of his stunned state, rushed forward with a towel. Sarah wrapped Emma carefully, checking her thoroughly for any signs of injury or distress. Emma's wide eyes were a mixture of terror and complete trust in her mother. Rebecca's confident demeanor began to crumble. Nearby witnesses were already pulling out their phones, recording everything. The pristine facade of Oak Ridge Estates was about to experience a very public reckoning. "I was just trying to," Rebecca began, but Sarah's look silenced her mid-sentence. The ambulance arrived within minutes. Paramedics carefully assessed Emma, their professional eyes taking in every detail. Sarah provided a calm, detailed account of the incident, her professional training evident in every measured word. Yet beneath that calm exterior, a volcanic rage was building. At the hospital, while Emma was being examined, Sarah stepped into the hallway. Her wet clothes clung to her body, a physical reminder of the traumatic event. She pulled out her phone and made a call, not to her immediate supervisor, but to a contact higher up in the county sheriff's department. "This isn't just about me," she said quietly into the phone. "This is about protecting vulnerable people from those who think they're above the law." What Rebecca didn't know was that Sarah wasn't just any county sheriff. She was head of the department's Civil Rights and Special Needs Protection Unit, and she had been building a case against similar incidents of harassment in upscale communities for months. This wasn't just a personal incident. This was about to become a very public statement. Emma would be okay. The doctors confirmed minimal physical trauma, more shaken than hurt, but Sarah knew the emotional scars could run much deeper, and she was prepared to ensure justice was served, not just for Emma, but for every person who had ever been marginalized, bullied, or dismissed. Rebecca Hartley had no idea what was coming. The next morning, Oak Ridge Estates was a powder keg of tension. News of the incident had spread like wildfire through the neighborhood's gossip channels and social media groups. Rebecca Hartley's carefully constructed image was crumbling faster than a sandcastle in a hurricane. Sarah arrived at the HOA office precisely at 9 a.m., Emma by her side. Her daughter wore a bright yellow sundress, her wheelchair adorned with colorful stickers, a deliberate statement of resilience and joy. They made an intentional entrance, drawing every eye in the room. Margaret Wilson, the HOA's administrative assistant, looked like she'd rather be anywhere else. Her hands trembled slightly as she sorted through documents, avoiding direct eye contact. "I'm here to file a formal complaint," Sarah announced, her voice calm but carrying the weight of professional authority. She placed a thick manila folder on the reception desk. Inside were meticulously documented instances of discrimination, witness statements, and legal precedents. Rebecca emerged from her back office, her perfectly pressed blazer a stark contrast to her now disheveled appearance. The confident woman from yesterday looked diminished, a cornered animal sensing the approaching storm. "Mrs. Thompson," Rebecca began, her voice a forced attempt at civility, "perhaps we can discuss this privately." Emma spoke up, her speech slightly halting but filled with determination. "No, I want to be here." The room fell silent. Sarah placed a proud hand on Emma's shoulder, a silent communication of support that spoke volumes. What unfolded next was a masterclass in professional accountability. Sarah wasn't just a mother, she was a county sheriff with a specialized background in civil rights. Each document she presented peeled back another layer of the HOA's systemic discrimination. Surveillance footage from the pool, security camera recordings, statements from multiple witnesses. Sarah had compiled everything with the precision of a seasoned law enforcement professional. Rebecca's actions weren't an isolated incident, but part of a pattern of harassment against residents with disabilities. "This isn't just about what happened to my daughter," Sarah explained, her tone clinical and controlled. "This is about a systematic failure to provide equal access and protection to all community members." The HOA board members shifted uncomfortably. Some looked genuinely shocked, while others seemed to be calculating the potential legal ramifications. Margaret Wilson, who had remained silent, suddenly spoke. "I have something to add," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. She pulled out her own folder, years of documented complaints that had been systematically buried. Rebecca's face went pale. The meeting was no longer about an isolated incident. It had become an unprecedented reckoning for Oak Ridge Estates, and Sarah Thompson was just getting started. Emma watched, her eyes bright with understanding. This wasn't just about her. This was about justice. The fallout was swift and merciless. Within days, the county's Civil Rights Division launched a full investigation into Oak Ridge Estates. Sarah's meticulously documented evidence became the cornerstone of the case that would reshape the community's entire governance structure. Rebecca Hartley's world began to unravel with surgical precision. Her husband, a prominent local real estate developer, distanced himself from her, recognizing the toxic liability she had become. Neighbors who once catered to her every whim now avoided her gaze in the local grocery store, the previous deference replaced by a mixture of shame and disgust. But Sarah wasn't finished. A public hearing was scheduled, and she ensured it would be more than just a routine procedural meeting. Emma would have a voice, not as a victim, but as a catalyst for change. Sarah had been working behind the scenes, coordinating with disability rights advocates, local media, and legal experts who specialize in community discrimination cases. The hearing room was packed. Local news cameras lined the walls, the red recording lights creating a sea of electric eyes focused on the proceedings. Emma sat in the front row, her wheelchair positioned strategically to be visible to everyone. She wore a crisp blue blazer, her hair carefully styled, radiating a quiet dignity that spoke volumes. Rebecca's attorney attempted to paint the pool incident as an unfortunate accident, a momentary lapse in judgment. But Sarah had other plans. "This isn't about a single moment," Sarah testified, her sheriff's badge prominently displayed. "This is about a systemic pattern of discrimination that has existed in this community for far too long." One by one, witnesses came forward. Margaret Wilson, the HOA's administrative assistant, became a surprise key witness. She presented years of buried complaints, documented instances of harassment, and internal communications that reveal a deeply entrenched culture of exclusion. The most devastating testimony came from unexpected sources. Longtime residents who had previously remained silent began to speak out. Families with children with disabilities, elderly residents who had been marginalized, community members who had witnessed but never challenged the toxic behavior, they all found their voice. Emma's impact was profound. When she took the stand, her speech might have been deliberate, her movements carefully controlled, but her message was crystal clear. She spoke about the day at the pool, about what it meant to be consistently treated as an inconvenience rather than a valued community member. "I am not a problem to be solved," Emma stated, her voice strong and unwavering. "I am a person who deserves respect." The room fell silent. Rebecca Hartley sat alone, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her. The woman who had once wielded power through intimidation now looked small, insignificant. Sarah knew this was about more than one incident. This was about fundamental human dignity, about creating a community that truly understood the meaning of inclusion. And they were just getting started. 3 months after the pool incident, Oak Ridge Estates was a transformed community. The public hearing had been just the beginning of a comprehensive overhaul that would become a model for inclusive neighborhood governance across the county. Sarah stood beside Emma at the newly renovated community center, watching as wheelchair-accessible ramps seamlessly integrated with the building's design. It wasn't just about compliance anymore. It was about genuine inclusion. The center now featured adaptive sports equipment, sensory-friendly spaces, and programming designed to welcome residents of all abilities. Rebecca Hartley was gone, her HOA presidency terminated, her real estate development contracts canceled, her social standing reduced to a cautionary tale. The legal consequences had been severe. Not only was she facing civil penalties, but the county had also brought charges for endangerment and civil rights violations. Margaret Wilson, the former HOA administrative assistant, who had become a key whistleblower, now sat on the newly formed Community Accessibility Advisory Board. Her first-hand knowledge and newfound courage had transformed her from a silent witness to an active agent of change. Emma had become an unexpected local hero. Local schools began inviting her to speak about disability awareness. Her story had sparked conversations about inclusion that went far beyond Oak Ridge Estates. Television interviews, local news features, she was no longer just a victim, but a powerful voice for change. Sarah reflected on the journey. What had begun as a moment of terror, watching her daughter thrown into a pool, had become a watershed moment for the entire community. The department she led was now developing new training programs for HOAs and community organizations, focusing on disability rights and inclusive practices. "Are you okay, Mom?" Emma asked, sensing her mother's contemplative mood. Sarah smiled, squeezing her daughter's hand. "More than okay," she responded. "We're making a difference." The renovation of the community center was symbolic of a larger transformation. Each adaptive feature told a story of resilience, of fighting back against discrimination. Braille signage, audio description systems, wide doorways, lowered counters, every detail spoke of a community that had chosen to do better. As they toured the new facility, Sarah noticed a group of children playing, some with disabilities, some without, completely integrated, completely unaware that just months ago such a scene would have been unimaginable. Rebecca Hartley had intended to push Emma out of the community. Instead, she had inadvertently pushed the community toward true understanding and acceptance. The pool incident was no longer just a personal trauma. It had become a turning point, a moment that challenged an entire community to look at itself honestly and choose a better path forward.